co-host is out on assignment, Reverend Darrell Gray, but I got in here to bag him up. I got Christen Griffin, who's going to join us on the show, and attorney Theresa Hassler on the line, straight up out of NYC, the great state and city of New York, New York. How about that, T? You want to say hello?
What's up, Pruitt? Thank you so much for having me here. You know, it's always a pleasure.
She says it's a pleasure to be on the phone with me. T, I'm gonna take you at your word. And Christen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt, for having me on the show. And hello, Miss Theresa, if you can hear me. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Speak up.
You as well. I can hear you.
All right, it's a pleasure to meet you. I look forward to having a great conversation with you.
You know, ladies and gentlemen.
Well.
Go ahead, T. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
you
have to put everything down and listen in to this show today. You know, as you know, we swore into office a new president on the 20th, a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago. And the first day in office, he started executing executive orders. And now he's all the way up to like 300 or more executive orders, touching on anything and everything. And so what we're going to do is talk about today about the moves that the president is making, how some of those moves are going to impact African Americans, particularly, everybody else, okay, secondarily. We're going to get into it. We just have to have this discussion. We got a millennial in the studio with us.
Yes.
So we're going to get the young perspective. And then we got a lawyer, a New York lawyer on the line and get their perspective. So as a matter of fact.
First of all, why do you always forget that I'm born and raised in St. Louis? You act like I'm just interloping in on your conversation.
Well, okay.
Okay,
so,
let's just
I
tell the
understand.
Whole story. Don't just tell part of the story.
I understand you was born and raised in St. Louis. I understand that you used to be the chief of staff for the lieutenant governor of the state of Missouri back in the day. I understand all of that, but I also understand that you are now a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, worked for the mayor of the former mayor of New York at one point in time. So you definitely are a New Yorker, but more than anything, you're a friend and a very good, trusted attorney at law. And so,
thank you.
And I would think that the East Coast has a very different perspective on all of this than anybody else, especially when we start talking about immigration. Because I think when we start talking about sanctuary cities, I think you all are the most sanctuary city we have. Well, maybe California may be a little bit different, but y'all close. Am I right or wrong?
We are extremely close. Absolutely.
Got you. So, T, hey, ladies and gentlemen, her name is Theresa Hassler, attorney Theresa Hassler, but I call her T. So when I say T, y'all understand who I'm talking about. So T, let's start off with you. The Trump administration, as a matter of fact, he just issued some new executive orders. And one of them stopped all federal funding for grants and things of that nature. And I just read something that said that one of the grant programs now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear this and hear this clearly. One of the recipients of that programming is early childhood education, early Head Start. Head Start. Everybody's familiar with Head Start. Those are young folks getting them ready at the very early stages, and it only funds. Head Start is targeted towards those members of the population who are financially impacted the most, the underserved population. They could be the working poor, or they could be the homeless. This is the lowest status on the economic scale in this country is which Head Start is geared up for. And my understanding, T, is that the people from Head Start went into the system today to pour down their money to pay for these kids to get to move ahead on Head Start, and the message came up and said, your payment is going to be delayed. We'll be right back with you, but it's going to be delayed. Head Start. Head Start. So, T, what's going on?
Well, you know what's going on. I mean, Head Start, of course, is an example of a fully federally funded grant. You also have, one of the things that when the president issued a series of executive orders just after being inaugurated, of course, a lot of it was geared toward programs related to discrimination. We say DEI, but there are a lot of programs related to the environment. And so when you think about programs like Head Start, federal funding, you can't not think about school meals, the school lunch program, right? Can't not think about WIC and food stamps, right? Which are both federally funded. You can't not think about all the environmental programs, things related to limiting the carbon footprint, and making sure that people have been trained in certain areas of the workforce. And so, all of the things that are being attacked are directly related to or were birthed from policies that were put in place to protect and to promote and to elevate Black people in America. And so even though when it comes to affirmative action and some of these other policies and cases that have been reversed, unfortunately, we know as a people throughout the years that even though those programs were designed for us, we have not always been the main beneficiary of those programs. However, despite those statistics, this is really a target toward the infrastructure, the basis of those programs. So even though we did not benefit mostly, even when you talk about Head Start, when you think about anti-poverty programs, we think about what we used to call welfare, we now call cash assistance. There's several examples where people who are not Black actually benefit in a lot of cases more so than we have. However, that is still a way to really absolutely gut any infrastructure, any formulation that would speak to the freedom that we have always tried to achieve in this country. And so this is not anything that is superficial. This is getting to the very heart of everything that has given us some semblance of freedom, of equality in this nation. And even though we've not always benefited fully by attacking it at its root, he is attempting to ensure that we go back 200 years effectively. And really enter into yet another stage of Jim Crow.
Got it. Christen, what do you think?
Attorney Theresa is very correct. With me working at a middle school currently right now in the education field, that's one of the issues that we have right now is lack of funding already. So when you talk about those cuts, right, from early childhood, and I work at Normandy School District, by the way, so we don't get that much funding as needed as we should. So when you talk about the lack of funding coming in and him trying to cut it, that causes a lot more issues. With the lack of funding that we don't have, we already have students that, have behavior issues, and we don't have the resources, the proper material to educate our children. And I still have some friends in college. I graduated college last year in 2024. So I still have friends in college who are also worried. They need that money to get through college. I know I needed that money as well. So the Department of Education is more important than a lot of people think. And I don't agree with, some of the executive orders that he signed. But specifically, this one is more important to me because I'm in that field. I see it every day, So it's a lot of things that we can go on and on about. But I really feel that the land net is a huge concern, especially for this semester for college students. It already started in college, too. They already received emails detailing why some of their money is being delayed. So it has started.
These are the Pell Grants.
Yeah, it has started in college. So this is a concern for a lot of college students, especially African American students.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I started off with there's a lot of executive orders. We're going to talk about lots of reasons I started off on this one because I think folks need to understand that the power of the pen and how it is impacting the most vulnerable, because at this stage of the game, and BJ's out the education system, when you start impacting children at the early childhood, at Head Start, you're saying that, hey, we're going to deal with them. But hey, Theresa, I just saw this other piece, and it said that the Trump administration has terminated an office last week whose purpose was to advise federal agencies on the best practices to protect students. It was created under Trump's first term after the Parkland school shooting massacre, and it codified into law the Safer Communities Act, which extended background checks for firearm purchases for people under the age of 21 and mental health program. So he terminated the office of school safety. I mean, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. And Theresa, you're going to tell us how we get that office back, right? And we're back with more on Point Blank. We got with us on the phone, we got attorney Theresa Hassler out of New York, native St. Louisan, and we got Christen Griffin, native St. Louisan, still St. Louisan, in the education field and doing some other stuff here locally. Hey, Theresa, he was just appointed to the Correction Facilities Oversight Board here in St. Louis. So he's a busy young man. He's the youngest member of that board, my understanding. So
congratulations.
We got him here in the studio. And we were just talking about the fact that one of the offices that the president terminated was the one that was there to look at the best practices for protecting students. And it's interesting that they would terminate that office when the number of school shootings have gone up. I mean, every time we look up, there's a school shooting somewhere. Not only the ones we in St. Louis, but I don't think there's been a month go by in the past year that we didn't have some sort of school shooting. And he terminates the office to look at the best practices to protect schools and students. So that one got to me more than anything else. But T, here's the one we really need to talk about.
Okay.
He put a moratorium and stopped all civil rights lawsuits, especially those involving police, law enforcement, and other areas. But he put a hold on them to put a stop on those lawsuits. I mean, T, you're a lawyer. What do you do? You got a lawsuit out there, and the Justice Department and the Office of Civil Rights is taking it on for you, and they put a halt to it. What did that do to you?
I mean, you can imagine, first of all, mentally and emotionally, with the technology that we have come to become familiar with, cameras, officer-worn cameras, dash cams, surveillance, social media, cell phones, all of the things that we have been experiencing as a people when we've been in custody, when we've been arrested, when we've been in jail, in prison, all of those things that we've experienced have now been brought to light a little bit more. And so this, seeming, breath of fresh air to actually have some sort of justice, to have some sort of transparency, to have accountability has almost effectively been erased. So, of course, first of all, dealing with the mental and emotional impact of knowing that there was discrimination, that there was abuse, or allegations of those things, and now to take away your legal right to actually have those allegations put before the court and determined, it is inhumane. So again, going back to my original statement, the goal of what's happening with all of these executive orders and all of these initiatives is to really go back to those days when we were not considered human beings. And that is effectively what's happening. And of course, it starts with eroding your mind, your body, your emotions, your spirit, and that's what's happening. I mean, you literally are stuck. You talked about being a grant recipient and going online today, and there's nothing there, or you're told there's something paused indefinitely. That's really where we are. That's really where we are. I would, I guess, encourage people who are waiting to file lawsuits or file claims that you still hold on to the evidence, that you keep all the paperwork, anything that you have that will support those allegations, hold on to it, because we don't know what's going to happen next. As hard as it is right now, this is only the beginning, but I do not think this is the time to sort of throw things away. I think this is probably the time to hold fervently to what you have, because there has to be a turning point soon. Things are happening too much and too fast.
Got you.
Too much and too fast.
Got you. Christen, what you think?
I agree with the attorney. It's not the right moment to delay cases, especially civil rights cases, with the amount of, racial tension in this country, especially with him in office right now. We're going to see an uproar in racial violence, especially police brutality cases. That's already a fear that I have right now. I continually tell my middle schoolers, hey, if you're somewhere and the police pull you over, just try your best to de-escalate the situation. Just do what they say, because now with the constant things that he said with giving police officers immunity and all these things of that nature, I fear for the middle schools that I teach. I fear for the kids that's in St. Louis public schools, and I fear for my community in general. So those cases are very important. It helps de-escalate civil rights issues in this country, and with that being on the back burner, that could really cause more problems.
One of the concerns that I have, and Christen, maybe you can help me out, and T, maybe you can help me out more. I remember even going back to as far as 10 years, I guess, when we the untimely death of Michael Brown. And I remember the protests and a lot of the young folks protesting, and I remember one thing that they used to echo and say consistently all the time, and even now I hear it every once in a while, BJ, and that is that they would say that the older generation has let them down, and that we have gone backwards. In their mind, we've gone backwards and we haven't made any progress. And so I disagree. We had not gone backwards, but I think what's going on today is truly now, if they want to experience what's going backwards is, I just hope that they're paying attention to what's been going on today, because what's happening now is going backwards. See, all that talk about we done gone backwards before, I was like, no, you don't quite get it. I don't agree with that. Now, if you want to say it now, I would agree with you that we're going backwards. And one of the biggest things, and here's what I want to ask you all. One of the biggest issues I had the example I give them now, I had this conversation the other day, is that the things that they're doing that we are experiencing that's impacting black folks, DEI, and what the corporations are doing, and how they following suit, that if we had not gained anything, then what are they taking?
Well, yeah. Like I said,
what are they taking?
But this is the thing. This is the infrastructure. So first of all, let's just be honest. Before, and I can't remember a time when it was actually called DEI. We come up with these phrases and these acronyms that to me are fairly new on the block. Right? We had Civil Rights Act, Equal Employment Opportunity. We even have those things. This idea of DEI is something that I don't remember really being a point of conversation really prior to 2020, when we did, as a nation, have arrested development. We had no place to go and distract ourselves when you had the 8 minutes and 46 seconds as George Floyd was killed. And from that, you had really a lot of attention on what was really then REI, which was race, equity, and inclusion. It was not DEI. But as what happens in America is when things are really focused on race or benefiting Black people specifically, it is sort of washed down and watered out, and it becomes this big tent. Before we get what we need to get from it, then we have to share with everybody else, and then it sort of gets watered down. So you're right, and that's happened with a lot of policies throughout the years. However, it is not the fact that we may have seen a modicum of success under certain, equality or equity-based policies. We did see some, not a lot, maybe not as much as most, or what it was intended for. But if you get to the heart of it, which is the gutting of the actual law, right, the prohibition, that's where even if we only got a drop out of the whole bucket, we can't even get the drop, right? So it's not impacting us when you see these programs that are being defunded, the right to sue is being taken away just because we didn't benefit to the full extent that we should have, since it was based on our suffering. It does not mean that its eradication will have no impact. As a matter of fact, it's going to have a deleterious impact because we are the core of it, and the core of it is being taken away. So as usual, we will be hit with it most. I've had this conversation with you several times, Pruitt, about what is a characteristic when it comes to discrimination and race, the color of someone's skin, gets a certain level of scrutiny that gender and age and discrimination and sexual orientation don't get, because race is what's called an immutable characteristic. It cannot be changed. It is the first thing, because it's a color that someone can judge you based on before they perceive anything else about you. And so all of these things, even though other people have benefited from them, we will be hurt most by the fact that they're not even in existence anymore. So it does impact us. Absolutely, it impacts us. And let me just really, really quickly about the law enforcement piece. When you talk about taking away, these investigators, these attorney general roles, the Civil Rights Bureau, one of the things they were tasked with was investigating local law enforcement. Baltimore, Oklahoma, all of these places, Minneapolis after George Floyd, and Ferguson, right? There's a huge Ferguson report that came out in 2004 when Eric Holder was Attorney General, and it really detailed the racism of the 88 municipalities in St. Louis County, and how it's really just making money, a churn. You just keep going from one municipality to another, and you never seem to get out of debt. You never seem to get out of jail. At the heart of all of these executive orders and prohibitions is an economic impact, right? The race, he's going to do it with Black History Month. Okay, whatever. You can celebrate Black History Month at your house, okay? I'm not saying that's ideal. You can do that. But when you start following the money, that's when things get touchy, right? How much money did law enforcement make? How much money did municipalities make off of tickets that can never get paid? People that can never pay down their debt, right? Charge after charge after charge after charge. When we start getting a little bit of relief, all of a sudden they found another way to clamp down. With every single executive order, there's a way to track that money. And that's really where the conversation should be.
Got you. Christen, you want?
Yeah, yes, definitely. When you talk about DEI, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I looked at it in a couple of ways. Firstly, with the issues with DEI jobs being lost, right? Target, Walmart, you want to go in a little deeper into it. So firstly, when I look at that situation, my grandma always says, hit them where it hurts, right? So we, as a community, have to look at what the older generation did back then, boycott, right?
Mm-hmm.
Boom. Boycott, 1955, helped de-escalate the bus situation in Montgomery, Alabama.
Right.
To where they had to respect the community down there because they were losing money.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward now to Mr. Pruitt said it best. In 2013, I was still a young boy. So I don't remember too much about the Mike Brown situation, but he said the young generation back then was telling the older generation that they felt that we were going backwards, correct?
Right.
So now we as the younger generation have to step up and say, okay, we are the new voices. You know, the old generation is getting older. They're not getting younger. We have to step up. So now what do? Well, me as a young person, boycott. Let's boycott this. We can say this, we can say that, but action is more important than just saying it. So we boycott and we hit them where it hurt. We take away their money that we give them, because the black community always shop at Walmart and Target, but it's black businesses out here that we don't support. So those black products that's at Target and Walmart, go straight to the consumer. Go to their websites and get that stuff now. Just because it's taken out don't mean you stop supporting or buying those things. We need to put money in their pockets as black entrepreneurs. That's what more important now. So I look at it as a bad thing and a good thing. It could definitely be some good things taken out of this situation. And then once we get those good things situated, then start tackling the bad things.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I used to think that lately, in this time and age, boycotts were not as effective as they used to be. But then something happened, BJ. Anheuser-Busch on Bud Light put a spokesman out there, was a member of the LGBTQ community. And these folks went in such an uproar that the sales of Bud Light tanked, the money that Anheuser-Busch made overall, to where guess who's number one now? It is Modelo. It's the Mexican beer. They went from these folks knocked them off they knocked the king of beers off of the crown. Can you imagine it? And it wasn't. And the sad part, no, I shouldn't say sad. The reality was, it wasn't the black community boycotting them. This was the majority community that did that to them, where they got rid of that spokesman. And they started doing things to try to make up for it and say, hey, you know, we hear you and this and that. So I'm just wondering now, it'd be interesting, Theresa, know if have the times changed where the boycott from the majority community is more powerful than the boycott from the minority community. You know, because I question whether if black folks quit drinking Budweiser and Bud Light, whether we would have been able to hurt them as much as the white community did when they did the same thing.
Well, a couple of things, and I don't want to in any way discourage. I think what Christen is saying is good. I think definitely, you know, young people, you know, but everybody's young to a certain extent. So I don't like to do the whole old young thing, right? Because everybody can learn from everybody else. I think that times are definitely different. I think that even in my youth, when I was a teenager growing up, you know, you had apartheid in South Africa, and there were a lot of colleges and universities in the United States that were wanting to divest. You had, you know, beverage companies and car companies and all these people that were aligned with apartheid. And you had a lot of attempts, us as consumers, us as the larger consumer population, wanting to empathize with the plight of blacks in South Africa who were enduring that. And there was some success, but that's just, I think, the last sort of mass attempt at a boycott that I saw. But again, it was not, I think that when it comes to boycotts, and even that, I think a lot of what happened was you had a lot of the larger corporations really getting involved in the pressure and divesting, I think, that happened at a political level. So I'm not saying it wasn't impactful, but I think that when you start thinking about the 60s and the 50s and the boycotts, you have to also think about integration and segregation. And when we are left with no choice, sometimes as a people, when we have no choice, then the boycott is effective because we don't have a choice. I think that with integration, because things have opened up that were not open to us when they had the Montgomery bus boycott, right? You know, doors and jobs and other places, we weren't as ingratiated into American culture, even though American culture is our culture. I think right now you have to be very strategic. I think that it's not enough to just say we got to just stop going to these places. Okay, well, people got to eat, people got to work, right? It has to be, and I leave that to you, Christen. It has to be strategic and direct. It has to be very pointed. I don't know what methods would be most effective, but it can't just be, we just can't go to those places because our lives have become so intertwined by design. We have become dependent on these things, and they know that. And so, we couldn't even sustain a freaking, football boycott when Kaepernick took a knee. It worked for a couple of years, but shoot, who ain't trying to watch the Eagles and the Chiefs? You understand what I'm trying to say? So I think that you have to be, I don't want to discourage or say this, because I don't know. I would only say that it has to be really thought out and strategic. And start off with something, I won't say small, right, but be very specific. And I think that's maybe the way to actually achieve a sustained boycott that Black people would get around.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. The one thing that I learned from back then, hearing and studying, is that everything was strategic during the Civil Rights Movement. They planned the campaigns beforehand. And Mr. Pruitt brought up a great point. When you look at these huge organizations like a Target and Walmart, just us, I feel like it's not enough. The one thing that comes to mind that I think about as a campaign-wise is before Dr. King was assassinated, he was doing the Poor People's Campaign, getting those different communities together, right? And it took time, but he had a plan where they were going to go to Washington, D.C. and talk about the housing issue and stuff like that, and it wasn't just African Americans. So when you think of those large organizations, even if you take us out of that, they still don't get money from other communities and things like that. So it definitely has to start small and get bigger,
right,
before you can really tackle a huge organization like a Walmart and Target.
I agree, and I definitely wasn't discouraging boycotts. I'm just wondering out loud. And I saw I saw a Facebook post today somebody sent me where there was some Black folks saying, no, we don't need to boycott Target completely because we have Black businesses whose products is in boycott or in Target. So go to Target and just buy their stuff, but nobody else's stuff. And I'm like, that's what you think? Is that possible?
I mentioned that kind of earlier with those products. There is website for these products. There is Black entrepreneurship going on that we don't look at, but because it's in Target, that's probably the only way that some of the community see those products. But it is websites for those products. That's why I said, how about you go to the actual website and actually, buy those products?
Hey, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on Point Black. And we are back with more on Point Black. And ladies and gentlemen, we got attorney Theresa Hassler out of New York, native St. Louis, on the line. She helping us peel back the onion on this thing, because it's an onion. It's thinking that what our president is doing, it is definitely an onion. And we also have in the studio Christen Griffin. We have a millennial in the studio, ladies and gentlemen. We have two millennials because he and I ain't that much far apart. I mean, there may be 20, 30 years difference, something like that, but is 30 years difference a big difference?
What do you consider a millennial? I'm trying to figure that out because something ain't wrapping around all the way. Because I think, I don't know how, Christen, I'm going to tell you something. I looked you up. I said, I don't know this young man. Let me look him up. We went to the same school. We both went to SEMO.
Oh, okay.
You went there 20 years after me. So I'm trying to figure out where this millennial stuff is coming from.
Oh, so
the millennial was born in the early 80s, and he was not born in the early 80s. You thinking about maybe a Gen Z.
He's a Gen Z.
But
okay.
He's not a millennial, okay? So let's just be clear.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, T. Wait a minute. Y'all went to the same school,
and you are
but 20 years apart.
And you a boomer. So you ain't even close to either one of us.
But 20 years apart. So that means he flunked all of those years and he just not getting out 20 years later.
Is that what? Listen. He made it through quick. Listen, he made it through quicker than I did, and I only had one major. I had no
said,
excuse
no,
back
Christian,
then.
no, he was there with you, and he took one course a year.
Oh man.
Oh, is that the,
And it takes
okay?
120
I should have
hours
used
to get
that.
out of there. So he just
I should have used that.
Oh
I should
man.
have used that excuse. I should have, because my mother was wondering why I was there for 5 years when it should only taken me 4. So maybe that's what I
So,
should have said happened.
so you was there when they wasn't the Red Hawks, correct?
Uh-oh.
I was not there before. I was a presidential ambassador, though. I see
Oh,
that. I
yeah,
was one of the
yeah.
first black presidential ambassadors. Me and a guy named Tyrone Turner, who's there in St. Louis, doing a lot of wonderful things in housing. We were one of the first black presidential ambassadors.
he
That's
just
a different.
said
That's a different color jacket. You already know that.
he just
Yes,
said
ma'am.
he was
Blazer.
one
That ain't
too,
no.
right?
That ain't no
Yeah.
polo.
Yeah. Thank you so much for opening the
Yeah.
doors for me to be able to be a president.
Yeah, well, it was
ambassador.
really Tyrone opened it for me, and we just, we got to keep that thing going. So, but I want to just really quickly, I want to get back to the boycotts, and I love the energy, I love where you're going, and I think this is something that has to be sustained. But this is how invasive this thing is, right? And so we have to be really unpacking a lot of history and how we got in the situation, and we were in another, I guess, considered Reconstruction period, right? Because when you think about DEI and opportunities and grants and funding and climate justice and all of these things, we were actually experiencing, at least to the majority, some level of access and prosperity and equity, albeit small, perhaps. And that's what happened. And a lot of times I actually was watching a very profound message from Roland Martin, and really getting into Reconstruction and how our country has entered several stages of Reconstruction. And Reconstruction, the first one was after the Civil War, and it was a period of time when Black people were given extreme freedom and access, relatively so, buying property, holding public office, starting businesses, all of those things. And when we are in these periods of time in American history, that is when all of a sudden there's this going back to something. And so what happened is, I think this is a new iteration of us in what they perceive to be a reconstruction. And now they're trying to, take us back to Jim Crow, which is one of the things that they do. And I say that to say, when it comes to these boycotts, of course, locally, there are Target and Walmart. We don't have the Walmart in New York City, right? You got to go to Jersey for Walmart. But Amazon, Whole Foods, Ford Motor Company, all the Meta platforms. You say Meta, that's Facebook, that's Instagram, right? So now that's the way we get messages out, right? So even the very platform that we rely on to give a message around meet here for a meeting, or we're going to boycott this. We have to use their platform just to even coordinate the boycott. Right?
You make a point. Hey, T, not to cut you off, you make a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. I'm just gonna say you make a very good point. We have to rely on their infrastructure in order to conduct a boycott and get the information out. At least that's what we're relying on now. But back then we didn't. But go ahead.
It was
I'm
word
sorry.
of mouth.
T.
It was the churches. Well, so we had there was more community, but we also knew that there was community because all we had was each other, and part of it was this and during the boycott they caught rides, they did carpools, people walked, they found other ways to do that, right, as a community. But integration has and this is not this is the downside, honestly, of that, is we've become so intertwined with everything that is not our own creation, that it's become harder for us to exist or to divest without it. I'm not going to say anything is impossible. I don't know how yet, but I believe that there's a way. I'm sure that you, Christen and Pruitt, there's a way that can be made, but we have to be realistic about where we are and how intertwined we have become in society. It's easy to say, I'm not going to go to Target, I'm not going to go, okay, but then where's the cheapest place you can possibly buy eggs? The absolute cheapest place, right? You can say Schnucks or Deerbergs, but they ain't they aren't Walmart or Target, but they divested from the Black community 20, 30 years ago. right? When Schnucks took over National and took all the stores out of North St. Louis in North St. Louis County, right? So we have to really sort of be thoughtful and very pointed in how we even get the message out about something like that. But studying the history and the cycles, we keep going through the same cycles. It's been 400 years in this country, and they don't have a new playbook. They really don't. We get ahead, they pull us back. We get ahead, they pull us back. This is another iteration. So we have to be creative, and we have it in us to be creative. But I want us to be knowledgeable about the history so we can move forward informed and very strategic.
Christen?
Yeah, the one thing that, really caught my eyes being strategic. Again, like you said, the platforms that we use, they can see that stuff. So the one thing that you really said that I was thinking was the churches, right? Mm-hmm. The churches in our community now, we don't really have the young people there for a certain reason. Based off of me being Gen Z, from what I hear from my peers is, the one thing that they felt that they wasn't getting in some of the churches that they went to was the love and support because of the different ideas or the different mindsets that they have. Some young people feel that because they believe in one thing, the church don't back them up on it. And we have to fix that. And again, like you mentioned earlier, attorney, I hate to hear the old versus young.
Call me T. Attorney is not my first name. I appreciate, Pruitt knows that. I'm not like that.
All right.
My first name is Theresa. Call me Theresa. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
T.
I'm gonna call her ma'am too. I'm gonna call you ma'am too.
Yeah, you call me ma'am Pruitt, but Christen can call me Theresa. That's what you call me. Okay? You call me ma'am. I will say, but Christen, let me just say this, Christen. Shame on the churches. Shame on the black churches. Absolutely shame on the black churches. Shame.
Wait a minute, T. That's blasphemy now. Wait a minute.
Well.
Wait a minute. I have to hold that till Daryl get here.
Because that is exactly right. It is. You don't look and you don't see yourself, and we get so steeped in legalism and traditionalism, and the generations are separate and old and young, and what you wearing and what you doing, and that ain't right, and that's why the numbers, not just in St. Louis and New York too, out across the country, are diminishing because young people aren't coming because they're not being met where they are. And that's what the church is for everybody. I don't care what you got on. You're supposed to meet people where they are. And so it's unfortunate that used to be the meeting place where people could have, a meeting of the mind. Going back to slavery, we were private when we were worshiping. They would leave us alone when we were worshiping. But now that's not the place. And there needs to be work done in the church. With that said, while that work is happening, we also have to think about other ways too, right, to form community.
But wait a minute, T. I got to push back on one thing you said. Now I got to.
All right.
You said we talk about how they dress. Now I'm gonna ask you something. Do you think? Okay. And I'm gonna show my chauvinistic side now. But do you think that the young ladies, what they would wear in the club, they should wear to church? Now, BJ is shaking his head, but I don't think nobody should be in the church with no booty shorts on. I'm just saying.
Let me say this. There are a couple of different things happening. First of all, the fact that we only talk about what women wear. I would love to go to church and not see a man in no damn skinny jeans. I'm so tired of seeing men in stretch pants. Let's be equitable about the conversation. We ain't just gonna be talking about the ladies, first of all. Second of all, I think that when you think about, first of all, I'm glad, sister, brother, you came to church. You could be anywhere in the world on Sunday morning, and you decided to come here. Now, did you come straight from the club? Even better, right? Right? Maybe you just, put here's a little thing, put on your lap, whatever. If everybody's so distracted by that, but guess what? You here. I don't care if you smell like liquor. I don't care if you are here. A church is a hospital, right? It ain't a hotel. Everybody ain't got to come there dressed up. No, are you freaking kidding me? You're supposed to come there, with everything, your hurts, damn, that's what it's for. And if I got to get cleaned up before I go to the hospital, I don't want to go to the hospital. That's the first thing. Now, if I look in my closet, I woke up and I'm like, dang, I ain't got nothing to wear. I just got this short dress, whatever. Okay. She goes, she's comfortable in it, maybe. And you have to be careful about people. We all have to be careful about people. Somebody can maybe, out of respect, separately. You don't embarrass people. You don't embarrass
I
people.
agree.
Hey, maybe, and I think that's the other thing too. People got so used to shaming people. Don't nobody want to come back if they feel ashamed. You don't cause anybody public embarrassment. There's a way to actually do something in a respectful way where somebody does not feel denigrated and disrespected. So that's what we're gonna do with that.
I agree with T, I agree, and you made a good point, and you matter of fact, you taking us out on this point. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to wrap this show up.
I'm sorry, Christen. I know you was trying to make a point.
No, you good. We had attorney Theresa Hassler on the show out of New York, and Christen Griffin. I say he's a millennial. He said he's a Gen Zer. We'd take that for whatever he is.
What he is. Stop telling him what he is. He just told you what he is.
Listen, T. Because you in New York don't mean you run St. Louis.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, T. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Christen. And we'll see you next week with more on Point Black.